Welcome back to the deep dive. I was sitting on my couch the other night just scrolling through Netflix, and I realized something kind of, I don't know, disturbing about myself.
Okay.
And probably about you too. We are absolutely obsessed with true crime.
It's a bit of a cultural phenomenon, isn't it? We all turn into these, armchair detectives.
Totally. I mean, you look at the top 10 list, it's always the Murdaugh murders, or the staircase, or some podcast about a cold case from 1982. We devour this stuff.
We do. We want to know who did it. We want to know the psychology behind it, why they snap.
Exactly. We get so caught up in the drama, the who and the why. But I think in all that binge watching, we skip over the most fundamental question of all. The one question that actually matters when the handcuffs go on. We just assume we know what a crime is. It's just
Starting to do something bad, right? Breaking the rules.
But it's not that simple.
Looking at the research for today, It is not that simple at all. It is definitely not. In fact, doing something bad is a lot of the time perfectly legal. You can be a terrible friend, a lying spouse, or just a generally awful human being.
And the law can't touch you.
Not at all.
No.
But on the flip side of that, you can be someone with relatively decent intentions, or someone who hasn't even physically laid a hand on a victim and find yourself facing a life sentence.
Which is just wild to think about. That's what we are digging into today.
I think so.
We're peeling back all the sensationalism to look at the machinery underneath. We're asking, what actually makes someone a criminal in the eyes of the law?
We're not looking at the story, we're looking at the architecture.
The architecture of crime. I like that.
That's what it is. It's a structure.
Yeah.
And today we're going to be deconstructing the specific, almost mathematical formula that turns a human being into a convict.
And for this, we're leaning on some really fascinating sources.
We are. We're looking heavily at the Indian Penal Code of 1860, which is this incredible document drafted by Lord Macaulay, and then we're tracking how those principles are carrying over into the new Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, the BNS of 2023.
But the concepts themselves, these aren't just for Indian law, right? This is bigger.
Oh, absolutely. These are the universal building blocks of jurisprudence. Whether you're in London, New York, or New Delhi, the fundamental recipe for a crime tends to use the exact same ingredients.
Okay, so here's the mission for this deep dive. We're going to break down the 4 specific elements that must exist for a crime to occur.
4 pillars.
Right. And if you're missing just one of those ingredients, the whole thing falls apart. No crime. And then we're going to track the timeline, the 4 stages a criminal goes through from that very first dark thought to the actual deed.
And I should warn you now.
Yeah.
We are going to challenge your intuition.
Oh, for sure. That happened to me just reading the notes.
Because as we'll see, you can actually commit a murder by doing absolutely nothing at all.
That's the omission part. I gotta say, that part really messed with my head.
And you can be found guilty of a crime even if you try to do it and fail miserably. The law is like a tripwire. And today we're going to map out exactly where all the lasers are hidden.
All right, let's start at the very beginning, the definition. How is a crime different from any other kind of wrong? I mean, if I borrow, say, $5,000 from you,
Okay.
and I promise I'll pay you back next week, and then I just don't, I ghost you, I've done something wrong, I lied, I took your money, is that a crime?
In that specific scenario?
Yeah.
Probably not. That's likely what we call a civil wrong.
Okay, so what is the difference? Because from your perspective, you're out $5,000, it feels like you've been robbed.
It does, true. But the law makes a really important distinction between private disputes and public wrongs.
Right.
If you breach a contract, or if we have a dispute over a property line, that's between you and me. The remedy for that is compensation. I sue you, a court orders you to pay me back, maybe with some damages.
The goal is to make you whole again.
Exactly. It's about fixing the balance between 2 private individuals. But a crime is a public wrong. It's seen as a violation of public law.
So it's not just against the person, it's against everyone.
It's against the state itself. When a crime is committed, the law views it not just as an attack on an individual, but as an attack on the collective.
That's why you always see case names like the State versus Jones instead of Smith versus Jones.
Precisely. The sovereign or the state steps in to prosecute. The great legal scholar Blackstone, way back in the 18th century, defined crime as an act committed or omitted in violation of a public law.
So it's about breaking a rule that applies to everybody.
Yes, and as another scholar, Sir James Stephen, put it, it's a forbidden act with a legal punishment attached. It's this idea of the Queen's peace, you know?
Right.
If I punch you in the face, I haven't just hurt your nose, I've shattered the stability of the community. I've broken the peace that the state guarantees to all of its citizens.
So the state has to step in.
Exactly. And the state doesn't care about getting you an ice pack for your nose. The state cares about punishing me to ensure that the collective stability of society is maintained.
Okay, so to turn a wrong into a crime, it has to fit this specific legal mold. And according to the sources, there are 4 elements, 4 pillars.
And if you knock one down, the whole prosecution collapses.
Let's start with the first one, which honestly, when I first read it, I kind of laughed.
Element 1, the human actor.
Right. You need a human to commit a crime. It just sounds like the most obvious thing in the entire world. I mean, who else is going to commit a crime? A ghost? My toaster?
It sounds obvious to us here in the 21st century. But if you actually look at the history of law, this wasn't always the case.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The requirement that the perpetrator be a human being is actually a specific and relatively modern evolution in our legal thinking.
This is where the research took me down that rabbit hole of the Ritter bit thing.
And the Ritter bit.
Yes. Okay, you have to tell me about the animal trials, because I read this, and I was sure it was a Monty Python sketch.
It does sound like comedy, but I promise you it was very serious business in medieval Europe and even in some ancient codes.
So what was the idea?
There was this concept that if any living thing caused harm, it had to be punished. It was about expiating the sin or restoring the natural order. So if a horse kicked a man and killed him,
The horse was in trouble?
the horse was arrested.
Arrested, like with handcuffs.
Well, ropes, probably.
Right.
But yes, taken into custody. If a pig ate a child, which tragically happened in medieval villages, the pig would be put on trial.
You're kidding me.
There are actual court records of pigs having defense lawyers.
A court-appointed attorney for a sow. What would they even argue?
Yes, and the lawyer would argue things like, my client was merely hungry, or the child provoked my client. And if the pig was found guilty,
What, jail time?
it would be publicly executed. Sometimes they'd even dress it in human clothes for the execution.
That is absolutely bizarre.
It is, but I think it shows how desperate people were to see justice done, even if the target of that justice had no idea what was happening.
It was about punishing the agent of harm no matter what.
Exactly. It didn't matter if the agent had consciousness. But modern jurisprudence, and certainly the IPC and the new BNS, rejected that completely. The first requirement for a crime is a human being.
So fast forward to today, if my dog bites the mailman, the dog isn't going to the electric chair.
No, the dog is considered property. It's an instrument.
But someone has to be held responsible.
And that someone is you. The liability shifts to the owner. You are the human actor who failed in your duty to control the animal. The animal is just the weapon, essentially.
Okay, so we need a human. But the notes had a really interesting nuance here about legal personality, because sometimes a person in the eyes of the law isn't a biological human.
Right, and this is absolutely crucial for the modern world. Section 11 of the IPC defines person very broadly. It includes companies, associations, or bodies of persons.
We call those juridical persons.
That's the term.
So a corporation can be a criminal,
Yes.
but how? I mean, a corporation is just a stack of papers filed somewhere. It doesn't have hands to strangle anyone. It doesn't have a brain to plan a heist.
It's what's called a legal fiction. We treat the corporation as if it were a person to ensure accountability. Think about it. If a huge chemical company decides to dump toxic waste into a river to save $1 million in disposal fees, who committed the crime?
Well, the people who made the decision, I guess. The CEO or the board.
Sure, they could be prosecuted individually, but the company itself benefited. The company itself acted through its employees. So the law allows us to prosecute the corporation as an entity.
But you can't put a corporation in jail.
No, you can't handcuff a logo.
Hmm.
But you can fine them into oblivion. You can seize their assets. You can revoke their charter, which is effectively the death penalty for a company.
Okay, so our human actor can be a biological person or one of these corporate legal people, but not every biological human counts, right? There are exemptions.
Correct. The law operates on the assumption that for punishment to make any sense, the person must be a fit subject for that punishment.
What does that mean, fit subject?
Punishment is meant to deter or reform. You can't deter someone who is literally incapable of understanding what they did was wrong.
This brings us to the age limit.
Doli incapax. It's a Latin phrase. It means incapable of deceit or incapable of crime. Under the Indian Penal Code, a child under the age of 7 is considered fully immune from criminal prosecution.
So if a 5-year-old finds a loaded gun, thinks it's a toy, points it at his babysitter, and pulls the trigger.
It's a horrific tragedy.
But it's not a crime.
It is not a crime. The 5-year-old lacks the cognitive capacity to understand the nature and consequences of that act.
Yeah.
You can't attach legal guilt to a mind that hasn't developed yet.
And the other big exemption here is mental capacity.
Yes. Section 84 of the IPC. This deals with what's termed unsoundness of mind. If a person, because of a mental illness, is incapable of knowing the nature of their act, or doesn't know that what they are doing is wrong or contrary to law,
then they can't be held guilty.
Correct. There was a case cited in the notes that really clarifies this. Bapu at Gajrav Singh v. State of Rajasthan.
What did the court say there?
The Supreme Court really underscored the principle. They said that Section 84 is fundamentally linked to the core maxim of all criminal law. An act doesn't constitute guilt unless it's done with a guilty intention.
And if you're legally insane, you can't form that intention.
You can't. You are, legally speaking, acting without free will.
So, to recap element 1, you need a human or a corporate person, and they have to be mentally capable of understanding their actions, which leads us perfectly into element 2. And honestly, this is the big one. This is the one that fills up half the law textbooks, the mens rea.
The guilty mind.
Right. We saw that Latin phrase over and over in the sources. Actus non facit reum nisi mens sit rea.
It really is the bedrock of criminal law. It translates to, the act itself does not make a person guilty unless the mind is also guilty.
Let's unpack that. Because it sounds simple, don't punish accidents, but the implications are massive.
Okay, think about the physics of an injury. Let's say I'm walking through a crowded market, I trip over a loose cobblestone, and I fall forward, knocking you down. You hit your head and suffer a concussion.
Okay, so I'm hurt. The act happened. My head hit the ground.
The act of my body hitting your body happened. The injury definitely happened. But did I commit a crime?
No. It was an accident.
And why was it an accident?
Because you didn't mean to do it.
Exactly. I lacked the vicious will. I lacked the blameworthy mind. My mind was innocent. The law separates the physical world from the moral world. In the physical world, you are concussed. In the moral and legal world, I am innocent because I didn't intend for that harm to happen.
But here is where I get stuck, and I think a lot of people do too. We use 2 words interchangeably in regular conversation: intention and motive. If I ask, what was his motive for punching that guy? Or what was his intention? I'm basically asking the same thing. I want to know the backstory. But the law treats them as complete opposites.
They are completely different concepts in a courtroom. And confusing them is a fatal error for any law student or lawyer.
So break it down for us. What is the legal difference?
Okay. Intention is the immediate goal. It's the what. What did you want to achieve with your physical action? If I point a gun at you and pull the trigger, my intention is to cause the bullet to hit you.
Okay, that's the direct result you're aiming for.
Precisely. Now, motive is the why. It's the fuel in the engine. Why did I want to shoot you? Was I jealous? Was I greedy? Was I taking revenge for something you did 10 years ago? That's the motive.
Or, and here is the classic law school hypothetical, was I trying to feed my starving family?
The Robin Hood scenario. Let's play that out. You steal a loaf of bread.
Okay, I take the bread from the bakery. I don't pay for it. I walk out.
What is your intention?
My intention is to take that bread without the owner's permission.
Correct. You intend to permanently deprive the owner of their property. That is the definition of theft. You have the mens rea for theft.
But my motive is noble. I'm saving a child's life.
And that is a beautiful thing, morally speaking. But legally, it is irrelevant to the question of guilt.
That feels so cold.
It's designed to be. Think about the alternative. If having a good motive was a valid defense against a crime, the entire legal system would collapse into chaos.
How so?
Well, imagine a terrorist. A terrorist blows up a government building. What's his motive? From his perspective, he's a freedom fighter. He believes he is saving the soul of the nation or serving a higher power. In his own mind, his motive is pure.
Right.
Or think of a vigilante who murders a known drug dealer. His motive is to clean up the streets, to protect the kids in the neighborhood. If we let them say, but I did it for a good reason, we would have to acquit them.
I see. So the law has to draw this really hard line. It only asks, did you intend to do the illegal act? If the answer is yes, you're guilty.
Exactly. The why you did it comes later.
At sentencing.
At the sentencing phase. The judge might look at you, the bread thief, and say, you were guilty of theft. But because your motive was desperation and not greed, I'm giving you probation instead of jail time. But you are still a convicted thief.
The sources mentioned a Supreme Court case, Om Prakash v. State of Uttaranchal from 2003, that really hammered this point home.
It did. The court was incredibly blunt. They ruled that if the prosecution proves the intention in the act, then the failure to prove a motive is irrelevant.
So you don't need to know why someone did it.
You don't. You don't need to know why a husband killed his wife to prove that he killed her intentionally. If the forensic evidence shows he strangled her, the fact that there's no apparent motive, no affair, no insurance policy, that doesn't let him off the hook.
Okay, so we've established you need a guilty mind. But guilty isn't just an on or off switch. It's not just, I want to kill someone. There are levels to this, right?
Yes. Culpability comes in shades of gray. And the Varghese-Somerset source we looked at breaks this down into a really clear hierarchy.
Like a ladder of guilt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At the very top, the absolute worst of the worst is acting intentionally.
This is your conscious objective.
Yes, I want him dead.
Yeah.
I want to steal that car. It's the specific desire for that outcome.
Okay, that's clear. What's the next step down?
One step down is acting knowingly.
How is that different from intentionally? They sound very similar.
Here, you might not specifically desire the outcome, but you are practically certain it will happen as a result of your actions.
Can you give me an example?
Okay. Let's say I want to collect insurance money on a valuable cargo shipment that's on a plane. To do this, I put a bomb on that plane, time to go off mid-flight to destroy the cargo.
Right.
Now, I know the pilot is on the plane. I don't hate the pilot. I don't want him to die. In fact, I'd prefer if he magically parachuted out. But I know that if that bomb goes off at 30,000 feet, he is practically certain to die.
So you can't go to court and say, but I didn't mean to kill him. I only meant to destroy the cargo.
No. You acted knowingly with respect to his death. You were just as guilty of murder as if you had intended it.
Wow. Okay, that's chilling. What's the next step down the ladder?
Recklessly. This is where you consciously disregard a substantial and unjustifiable risk.
This is the drunk driver scenario, isn't it?
That's a classic example. Or even just an incredibly aggressive sober driver. You're driving 100 miles per hour through a school zone at 3:00 p.m. You aren't trying to hit a child. You hope you don't. But you are consciously disregarding the massive risk that you might. You're gambling with other people's lives.
And finally, at the very bottom rung of this ladder.
Negligently. This is the failure to perceive a risk that a reasonable person would have seen.
So this is where your defense is, I didn't even think about it.
And the law's response is, well, you should have. If you are cleaning a loaded gun in a crowded room and it goes off and kills someone, saying, I didn't know it was loaded, isn't a defense against negligence. A reasonable, prudent person checks the chamber.
So you have this whole spectrum from I meant to do it all the way down to I should have known better.
Precisely. And the law has a bucket for each of those states of mind. Different crimes require different levels of culpability. Murder usually requires intention or knowledge. A traffic fatality might fall under negligence.
Okay, this is making sense. We're building our formula. Element 1, human. Element 2, mens rea, the guilty mind. Now we need element 3. You can't just sit in your room and think evil thoughts and go to jail. You have to actually do something.
The actus reus.
The guilty act.
This is the physical manifestation of the crime. It's the external element that connects the internal thought to the outside world.
And just like the mind has to be willing, this act has to be voluntary.
Yes. This is critical. If I grab your hand, physically force your finger onto a trigger, and use my strength to make you squeeze, you haven't committed the actus reus. I have. You were just an instrument, a puppet.
What about medical issues? Nate's mentioned a term, automatism.
That's right. If you are having an epileptic seizure or a convulsion and your arm flies out and hits someone, that is not a voluntary act. Your conscious will wasn't controlling your muscles.
And sleepwalking, can that really be a defense?
Believe it or not, yes. There is a valid legal defense called somnambulism. If you are truly sleepwalking, you aren't conscious. There have been actual cases where people have committed acts of violence while asleep and were acquitted because the actus reus wasn't voluntary.
That is just wild. But here's the twist in the research that really got me. We call it the guilty act, but sometimes the act is doing absolutely nothing.
Yes. The paradox of the illegal omission.
This one bothers people. I think the idea that just standing still can be a crime it's difficult.
It's difficult because it once again touches on that very blurry line between law and morality.
So clarify this for me. Let's use the classic bystander effect scenario. I'm walking by a lake. I see a stranger, a child, drowning. I'm a strong swimmer. I even have a rope in my bag. I could save them easily, with no risk to myself. Instead, I stand on the shore, I eat my sandwich, and I watch them drown.
Morally, you are a despicable human being.
I agree. But am I a criminal?
Under the general principles of the Indian Penal Code and English common law, no, you are not a criminal.
It just feels so wrong.
It feels wrong morally, of course.
Right.
But legally, you have no legal duty to that stranger. The law distinguishes between misfeasance, which is doing something wrong, and nonfeasance, which is not doing something good. We generally don't punish people for not being heroes.
Generally. So there are exceptions. When does doing nothing become a crime?
It becomes a crime when a legal duty to act exists. If you are the lifeguard hired to watch that beach, you have a contractual duty. If you eat your sandwich while someone drowns on your watch, you are liable.
Or if you're a parent.
Yes.
Yes.
A parent has a statutory duty to care for their child. And this brings us to a case that is honestly one of the hardest things I've ever read. Om Prakash v. State of Punjab from 1961.
Yeah, this one was incredibly dark.
It's a case of extreme domestic cruelty. A husband, Om Prakash, was living with his wife, Bimla Devi. He didn't beat her, he didn't stab her, he simply withheld food.
He locked her in a room and starved her.
That's it. He locked her in a room and stopped feeding her. For weeks. When she finally managed to escape and get to a hospital, the doctors were horrified. The report described her as a mere skeleton.
And his defense in court was essentially, I didn't do anything to her.
Exactly. He argued, I didn't hit her, I just didn't act. He tried to use the omission defense.
And what did the Supreme Court say?
They weren't having any of it. They upheld his conviction for attempted murder. They said, you are her husband. You have a legal duty to provide her with sustenance and care. His omission, his failure to feed her, was an illegal act calculated to cause her death.
So the act was the silence, the inaction itself was the weapon.
Precisely. There's another famous case, DPP v. Santana Bermudez.
The needle in the pocket case.
That's the one. A police officer is searching a suspect. She asks him, do you have any sharp objects or needles in your pockets? The suspect says no.
But he's lying.
He's lying by omission. She reaches into his pocket and gets pricked by a used syringe. He didn't stab her, he just stood there and said nothing. But the court ruled that his failure to warn her created the danger. That omission constituted the assault.
It makes sense. If you create the risk or if you're already responsible for the person, you can't just wash your hands of it and walk away.
That's the principle.
Now, before we move to the final element, I need to ask about the big exception to the rule. We spent all this time talking about how crucial mens rea is, the guilty mind, but there are crimes where the defendant's mind doesn't matter at all, right?
Yes. This is the important category of strict liability offenses.
The we don't care what you were thinking crimes.
That's the motto. In these specific cases, if you did the act, you are guilty. Period. Your state of mind is irrelevant.
What kind of crimes fall into this category?
Usually what are called public welfare offenses. Traffic laws are the most common example. If you're speeding, it doesn't matter if you intended to speed, or if your speedometer was broken, or if you were just daydreaming. You were speeding, you get the ticket.
Because the risk to the public is the same regardless of what was going on in your head?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's a more serious and famous example that really defines this concept. The English case of R.V. Prince from 1875. This deals with kidnapping and the age of consent.
Right. The defendant, a man named Prince, took a girl away from her father.
Yes. And the law at the time said that taking a girl under the age of 16 out of the possession of her guardian without their consent was a crime. The girl in question was 14.
But Prince had a defense, didn't he? He claimed he didn't know.
He did. The girl looked older. And crucially, she told him she was 18. He argued that he honestly, sincerely believed she was an adult. He had no guilty mind, no mens rea, regarding the fact she was a minor.
He thought he was just eloping with an adult woman.
Right. But the court held him guilty anyway.
Why? That seems to violate the mens rea principle.
It does, which is why it's an exception. The court said that the act of taking a young girl away from her father is an inherently wrongful act, or at least a very risky one. They said essentially, if you choose to do this act, you do it at your own peril. If you're wrong about her age, that's your problem, not the law's. It's strict liability.
So lesson learned, don't kidnap people, and if you do, check their ID very carefully.
Some good life advice there, generally.
Okay, we are almost at the full recipe for a crime. Element 1, human. Element 2, guilty mind. Element 3, guilty act or omission. The fourth and final element is the result, injury.
Yes, and Section 44 of the IPC defines injury. And again, for our listeners, this is much broader than just blood and bruises.
It's not just physical harm.
No. An injury in the eyes of the law is any harm illegally caused to a person's body, mind, reputation, or property.
Okay, body is obvious, wounds, fractures. Property is also obvious, theft, vandalism. But mind, how do you injure a mind?
Psychological trauma. If I threaten you with a knife, but I don't actually cut you, I've caused you fear, alarm, terror. That's criminal intimidation. That is an injury to the mind.
And reputation.
That's defamation, slander, or libel. If I knowingly publish a lie about you that destroys your career and your standing in the community, I have injured your reputation. That can be a crime.
And the final key here is connecting the act to the injury, right?
Causation. The prosecution has to prove causation. They use the but-for test, but for your act, would the injury have happened? If I punch you and you fall and you hit your head, my punch caused the injury.
What if I punch you, you're fine, but then a meteorite hits you 5 minutes later and you die?
Then I'm guilty of assault for the punch, but not of murder from the meteorite. My act didn't cause the death.
And the mind and the act have to happen at the same time, this idea of concurrence.
Yes, this is crucial. The guilty mind and the guilty act must concur. If on Monday I decide I want to kill you, that's my guilty mind, but I check it out. Then on Friday, completely by accident, I run you over with my car. That's the act without the guilty mind.
I'm dead either way.
You are. But on Friday, it's a tragic accident, not murder. The murderous intent from Monday had evaporated. You cannot stitch a past intent to a present accidental act to manufacture a murder charge.
It's just amazing how much logic goes into this. It really is a formula.
I have to be. The stakes are someone's liberty. You can't just go on vibes or feelings.
So that's the formula for a crime. But crimes don't just pop into existence fully formed. They evolve. They have a life cycle. And this is the second half of our deep dive today, the 4 stages of crime.
This is the timeline, the criminal's journey, if you want to call it that.
It starts in the head, stage 1, intention.
This is the Minority Report stage. It's the moment you think, I want to rob that bank or I want to kill my boss.
We've all been there. Figuratively speaking, of course.
Of course. But here's the key thing. Merely having that thought is not a crime.
Why not? If I have the mens rea, the guilty mind.
For 2 very important reasons. 1, proof. How can the state possibly prove what you're thinking if you haven't done anything or said anything? We don't have mind readers in our courtrooms.
And the second reason?
Liberty. And a legal concept called locus ponentii.
Okay, another fancy Latin alert.
It means opportunity for repentance. The law recognizes that people are volatile. We have dark thoughts. You might be furious at 5:00 p.m. and want to burn your neighbor's house down, but by 7:00 p.m. you've cooled off and you're over it. As long as it stays in your head, the law gives you the space to change your mind.
So stage 1 is totally safe, no jail time for just thoughts. Then we move to stage 2, preparation.
Now we're getting more serious. This is where you start gathering the tools. You buy the gun, you mix the poison, you drive to the bank to scope out the cameras and the guard schedules.
Now, surely this is illegal. I mean, you're buying poison.
Generally, no. Preparation is usually not punishable.
Wait, really? If I go out and buy a gun, a ski mask, and a getaway car, that's not a crime.
Not necessarily. Owning a gun, if you have a permit, is legal. Owning a ski mask is legal. Why? Because of one word. Ambiguity.
We don't know for sure what you're going to do with those things?
Exactly. If I buy a can of gasoline, am I planning to mow my lawn, or am I planning to commit arson? If I buy a large knife, is it for my kitchen or for a mugging? The act itself is innocent. It's equivocal. So the law usually holds back and doesn't intervene.
Usually. I'm sensing an exception coming.
There are always exceptions. Some preparations are considered so dangerous, so threatening to the state itself, that we don't wait for the ambiguity to clear up. We can't afford to.
Like what?
Waging war against the state. That's Section 122 of the IPC.
Yeah.
If you are stockpiling assault rifles and grenades and maps of government buildings in your basement.
You don't get to say, oh, I was just collecting them for a hobby.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The state intervenes immediately. Merely collecting the arms with that intent is the crime.
What else falls into that category?
Counterfeiting. If you have the special dyes and the printing plates to make fake currency, you're guilty. We aren't going to wait for you to actually print and spend the money. And a very specific crime in Indian law, dacoity.
Right, dacoity is a specific term. It's gang robbery, isn't it?
Yes, committed by 5 or more persons. Section 399 creates a special offense, making preparation for dacoity. The logic is that if 5 or more people get together with weapons to plan a robbery, that gathering itself is a powder keg. It's a public terror threat. We don't wait for them to knock on the bank's door.
Okay, so usually preparation is safe unless you're a terrorist or a counterfeiter or part of a large gang. But then comes the line, the invisible line where you cross from preparation into crime. Stage 3, attempt.
This is the point of no return. An attempt is a direct movement toward the commission of the crime after the preparation is complete.
So if preparation is buying the gun,
An attempt is aiming it at someone and pulling the trigger. Even if the gun jams, even if you miss, you've done everything in your power to commit the crime.
there was a fascinating case in the sources about this very distinction. Abhay Mishra v. State of Bihar from 1961. This wasn't a murder case. It was about a student trying to cheat.
A cheat, yes. This man, Abhayanand Mishra, wanted to take a university entrance exam. To qualify, he needed to be a teacher and a graduate. He was neither. So he forged the documents.
Classic forgery.
He then sent this fake application to the university. They were fooled, and they issued him an admission card to take the test. But then, before the exam day, someone tipped them off. They discovered he had lied, canceled his admission, and charged him with attempting to cheat.
And his defense was pretty clever. He argued, I haven't taken the exam yet. I haven't written a single answer. All I did was prepare.
It was a bold argument. He claimed sending the application was just another step in his preparation, like buying a pen for the test.
But the Supreme Court shut him down?
They shut him down hard. They said no. The moment he put that fraudulent application in the mail, he had done his part. He had fired his shot, so to speak. The fact that the university caught it, that the bullet missed its target, didn't matter. Getting the fake papers was the preparation. Sending them was the attempt.
So if you launch the missile, it's an attempt, even if it gets shot down halfway to the target.
That's a perfect analogy.
And this brings up a concept that sounds like a philosophical riddle. Attempting the impossible.
Oh, this is one of my favorite parts of criminal law.
Can you be found guilty of attempting to do something that was physically impossible to do?
Absolutely, yes. The classic example that every law student learns is the empty pocket.
Okay, walk me through it. I'm a pickpocket. I see a bulge in your jacket. I think it's your wallet. I deftly slide my hand into your pocket to steal it.
But I left my wallet at home today. The pocket is completely empty.
So I stole nothing. There was no injury, no harm, no foul.
Major foul. You are guilty of attempted theft.
I couldn't have stolen it. It wasn't there. It was impossible.
It doesn't matter. Your intention was to steal. Your act, putting your hand in the pocket, was a direct step done toward that end. The only reason you failed was because of an external fact you didn't know about.
Yeah.
The law doesn't care. It punishes you for what was in your mind and for the act you took based on that mind.
It's really about punishing the manifested intent. The law punishes the trying.
Exactly. If you shoot a scarecrow in a dark field thinking it's your enemy, you've attempted murder. You've shown your true colors.
And finally, stage 4 is just commission.
The crime is successful, the bullet hits, the wallet is stolen, the injury is caused, the full offense is complete.
So to quickly recap the timeline, 1, you think about it, that's safe. 2, you prepare for it, that's usually safe. 3, you try to do it, that's a crime. 4, you actually do it, that's also a crime.
That is the roadmap of a crime.
But going back to that line between preparation and attempt, in the real world, it feels razor thin, doesn't it? I mean, how do judges actually decide? How do they look at a set of facts and say, oh, he was just preparing versus, no, he was attempting?
It is arguably one of the hardest questions in criminal law, because you are trying to judge an action without knowing the final outcome. To help with this, courts have developed specific legal tests.
The first one is the proximity test.
Right, and proximity here doesn't mean physical distance. It means metaphorical distance. How close was the defendant's act to the final completed crime? Was it dangerously close?
Give me an example of the proximity test in action.
Okay, let's go back to arson. If I buy a matchbox with the intent to burn down your haystack, I am metaphorically miles away from the crime. I still have to drive to your farm, get out of my car, walk to the haystack. Many steps remain. That's just preparation.
Okay.
But if I've already driven to your farm, I've poured gasoline all over the haystack, and I strike the match. Even if the sudden gust of wind blows the match out before it touches the hay, I was proximate. I was dangerously close. That is an attempt.
That makes a lot of sense. What's the other test?
The other main one is the equivocality test. This connects back to the idea of ambiguity we talked about earlier. It relies on another Latin maxim, res ipsa loquitur.
Which means the thing speaks for itself.
Exactly. The test asks, does the defendant's act at that moment speak for itself? Does it have any other innocent explanation? Or does it only make sense if they are trying to commit a crime?
The sources had a great example with a ladder.
Right. If I'm found standing in your garden with a ladder at noon, my actions are equivocal. I might be the window cleaner you hired. I might be a handyman. Or I might be a burglar. Since there's an innocent explanation, it's still just preparation.
But if the circumstances change?
If it's midnight and I'm wearing a ski mask and I have the ladder placed up against your second-story bedroom window and I'm holding a glass cutter,
The thing speaks for itself.
there is no innocent explanation for cutting someone's window at midnight while wearing a mask. The act is unequivocal. It screams burglary. Therefore, it is an attempt.
It's really fascinating how the law tries to peer inside our heads by looking at what our hands are doing.
It has to. The entire system is a set of checks and balances. We don't punish thoughts because we value freedom of mind. We don't punish vague preparations because we value legal certainty. But we do punish attempts because we value public safety. We can't always wait for the body to hit the floor before we intervene.
So putting it all together now, to be a criminal in the eyes of the law, it's this rigorous, multi-part checklist.
It is.
You need to be a human or a corporation. You need to have a guilty mind, a mens rea. You need to perform a voluntary act or an illegal omission. You need to cause a recognized injury. And if you haven't finished the crime yet, you need to have crossed that invisible but crucial line from preparation to attempt.
That is the anatomy of a crime. It removes the emotion and the drama and looks at the components. It's technical, but it's what keeps the system from being arbitrary. It's what keeps it functioning.
It really does change how you look at the news. You stop asking, is he a bad guy? And you start asking, did he have the required mens rea? Was the actus reus voluntary? Did his act cause the harm?
And that is the fundamental difference between a moral judgment and a legal judgment.
Before we wrap up, I want to circle back to one thing that's really sticking with me. That idea of omission. The fact that we aren't legally bound to save a drowning stranger.
Yes. That's the point that usually lingers with people the longest.
It's lingering with me. It just feels like a flaw in the system somehow.
And maybe it should feel that way. But here is the final provocative thought for our listeners to take away. We learned that failing to act is only a crime if you have a pre-existing legal duty. But the question is, in a modern, interconnected society, should that gap between our moral duty to help a stranger in peril and our legal duty be smaller?
Should we be legally required to be heroes?
Or maybe just decent neighbors? Some countries, like France, actually have duty to rescue laws. If you are able to help someone in grave danger without risk to yourself and you don't, you are a criminal.
But the common law tradition has resisted that.
It has. It says that if we make it a crime to walk past a drowning child, we are using the heavy hand of the state to enforce morality. We would be making potential criminals of us all every time we turned a blind eye to suffering.
That's a heavy thought. Where does the state's power to compel action end and your personal freedom to do nothing begin?
Exactly. The law currently draws the line at legal duty. But laws are not set in stone. They evolve with society. And maybe, just maybe, that line needs to move.
Something to chew on the next time you see something happening and you have to ask yourself, should I get involved? We'll leave you with that. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of crime.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.